What are your top 3 big ticket items that you spend money on? And I want you to find money so you can take those extra dollars and put them towards things that you actually want this money to do. I want you to attack this debt with your extra money. And so that is why we do this. We want to be buying back our freedom so that we can do more of the things that we value. And we're going to start negotiating, baby. We're going to start to get on the phone and we are going to put on our smiling faces and we're going to start to negotiate a little bit. Now, today, we're diving into 9 ways to double your savings this month. And if you've ever felt like savings and investing is an uphill battle, you are not alone because so many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck right now. I want to give you actionable tips of what you can do in order to grow your gap. Now, what is the gap? The gap is the difference between your income and your expenses. And when you have a gap there between your income and expenses, you can take those extra dollars that you have left over and you can put them towards wealth building activities. And so this is why we want to go through this exercise is 1, we want to make sure that we are spending our dollars on things that we truly value. And so figuring out what we value, maybe it's vacations, maybe it's fitness, maybe it is doing more of the things that you love. Those are going to be things that we want to prioritize. And then secondly, we also want to make sure that we are prioritizing our future. And so we want to be putting more dollars towards our future into retirement accounts, into real estate, into other investments. And so that is why we do this. We want to be buying back our freedom so that we can do more of the things that we value. And this becomes an amazing cycle over time because the more freedom that you buy, the more you can do the things that you value, and it starts to grow more and more and more. Now, everybody listening to this podcast, I truly believe that each and every single one of you can become millionaires, and that's what we want you to do. And so doing some of these things, growing your savings every year is going to help you achieve that goal. So I am ready to jump in this episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1 may sound obvious, but it's something a lot of people don't do. And from a psychology standpoint, it is so helpful. And this is to break your savings goals into small chunks. So when we start to plan out how much we want to save, and you may get to a point in time where you're saying, well, I got to figure out how much I need for retirement. And so you run through the calculation of doing the 25X rule. And so if you've never heard of us talk about that, basically what you want to do is figure out, hey, what is my retirement number? What number do I need to have invested in order to be able to retire? And so let's say, for example, you need $80,000 per year, and that'll cover all your living expenses throughout the year. Well, if it's $80,000, you need $2 million invested if you multiply 80,000 by 25. And that's going to give you the quick and dirty back of the napkin math on what your freedom number is. It's really quick. It's really fast. But then you say to yourself, well, how much do I need to invest over time over the course of the next 30 years to be able to hit that? Maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's 5,000. It depends on what it is. But if these numbers sound daunting to you, if $10,000 per year sounds daunting, then what I want you to do is I want you to break this out into small chunks. Now, there's a very specific reason on why we are doing this. So $10,000 per year, if you broke that down per month, that'd be $833 per month saved. That'd be $192 per week saved. That'd be $27 per day saved. Now, I want you to ask yourself this question because $10,000 for some people save and invest that on the show. A lot of folks do who listen to the show. Some of you, though, are just getting started. And we have a lot of people at the beginning of their journey. And you're saying to yourself, $10,000, how would I ever save that amount of money in 1 year? But I want you to think through something. $27 per day. It feels like life these days costs $200 per day just to get by half the time. And so when you go through this process, I want you to say to yourself, do I waste $27 per day? Do I buy random Amazon things? Do I go to Walmart? Do I go into Target and buy random things that I did not intend on purchasing when I walked in that store? If this is you, and if you think that you can find a couple of different smaller things that are going to add up over time, then I want you to be a little more conscious about this because breaking it down into small chunks, what it does is it makes your goals attainable. And that's what I want for each and every single one of you. Let's do it for $25,000 per year. Let's say you are making a good income and you think that you can save $25,000 per year because you are just killing it. Maybe you get a bonus at the end of the year. Maybe you just have a really high salary. Your living expenses are covered. Your goal is to have a gap of $25,000 per year. That's $2,083 per month. That's $480 per week, and that is $68 per day. And so this, again, is broken down into smaller chunks. But let's do a smaller number. Let's say you want to save $5,000 per year. That is only $417 per month. You know how many people overextend themselves on buying a car, for example, and their car payment is $800 when they should have just bought a car where their car payment was $400 and saved the difference? That would be an additional $5,000 per year that you could put towards investments. And you're not just losing out when you do something like that on the $5,000, you're also losing out on the opportunity cost of being able to invest this money and also the growth of that money as well. The S&P 500 last year returned 25% to investors. And so you're not only losing out on that $5,000, you're also losing out on 25%. You're also losing out on whatever the potential growth was that year. $5,000 is also $96 per week. Can you come up with an additional $96 per week? Or can you come up with an additional $14 per day? How many just frivolous purchases do you make that add up to $14 per day? Now, this doesn't mean that you're spending at $14 every single day, but maybe, once a week you go buy that $90 new pair of shoes. And the next week you go out and you overspend on a couple of different things that add up. This is where it breaks down to break these small chunks up to make it easier. So what I want you to do is I want you to figure out what your savings goal is this year. Maybe stretch yourself slightly. Do it to where you're just slightly uncomfortable with that savings goal, okay? Then I want you to break that savings goal down, all the way down to small chunks. And when you break it down into small chunks, what you will find is that it is much more attainable than you once thought it was, especially if you're stretching yourself just a little bit. And I want you to tie it to everyday actions. Can you cut out a certain thing every single week to help you attain that goal? Secondly, is you can use something like a savings challenge. So I am not big on like no spend months or things like that. I don't really think that's a healthy way to associate yourself with your money. But sometimes when you're just getting started, if you want to get a jump start and you want to be able to get that rolling, then maybe you do something like that. You do something where you spend less in a specific category, or you do a no spend month on eating out. And so you save all those extra dollars that you normally would spend on eating out. You can do things like that, but to do a no spend challenge for a month or 2 or 3 months, sure, you can go ahead and do that. It's just not my favorite way to associate. I don't want you to associate money with pain, because it's not. Money can be something that is absolutely amazing and can get you the things that you value. And it is a tool that allows you to get to the next step. And so that's why I don't love those no spend challenges for most people. And then automating the process is going to be partially what we talk about here later. So that is number one. Number two, and this is a huge one, is to get your savings buckets set up using the bucket method. So we have an entire episode talking about the bucket method. If you have not heard that episode, I highly, highly recommend it. It was one of our most popular episodes last year. And the bucket method is basically a way for you to set up and automate your savings. So once you have this savings goal in place and you start to break it down into small chunks, what I want you to do is start to set up savings buckets. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, where do I put this savings? Great question. So what I want you to do is, if you are saving and in the emergency fund phase, we're going to be setting this up and putting it in a high yield savings account. If you don't know what an emergency fund is, all that is, it's a sum of money that you set up in case life throws monkey wrenches at you. Meaning, if life throws something in your way, like your car breaking down, or you need a repair at your house, or you need to get a brand new toilet because your toilet broke, or you need to fix an electrical issue in your house, or you need to, pay for a bunch of tolls that you forgot about. There's a whole long list of, things that could happen in life. And when those things happen in life, you're going to have cash available and just there. And you know what is powerful about having cash just there and available because you set up a plan? What's powerful about that is that now you don't have to stress or worry when a problem arises. I've talked about this before, but the first time I set up my emergency fund and had that cash in place, and my car broke down and I had a $2,500 repair with my car, and I would not be able to drive my car anymore unless I got this $2,500 repair. And I could not believe how amazing it felt to just have cash available to take care of it. I just took care of it. The money was there. I did not have to worry. And that right there is one of the most powerful feelings that you can have with money, is being able to just pay for it in cash, not worrying about where the money's going to come from, not worrying about, oh man, do I have to go backwards back into debt again to pay for this? No, instead you have the cash just there. And once I saw this was one of the light bulb moments for me when it came to my money, because once I saw how this actually really worked in the real world, all of a sudden everything came together. And so you got to set up an emergency fund first. We have something called the 1-3-6 method that talks you through how to set up your emergency fund. You can go look that up as well. It is that was our most popular episode last year, was the 136 method. So make sure you set that up. But your emergency fund, bare minimum, I want you to have 1 month, then 3 months, then 6 months. I want you to build it up over time. What else goes in a high yield savings account? Well, you can also set up stuff for your vacation fund, for saving for a new car, for a wedding fund, for home renovations. Those types of things can also be saved into a high yield savings account. Now, for investments, I want you to invest them, obviously, into a brokerage account. So this is going to go into something like Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab. Those are the three that I would recommend wholly to most people. And so when you want to set up your brokerage account or your retirement accounts for long term, that's where you're going to automate your money into those brokerage accounts. And so let's think about this for a second. Every single extra dollar that you make that you want to put towards your financial future, I want you to put it towards investments or your emergency fund. And so as you're starting to build up your emergency fund, what you're going to do is you're going to build up the first month. Then you're going to pay off high interest debt, any debt above a 6% interest rate. Then after that, you're going to go to 3 months of expenses saved in your high yield savings account. Once you have 3 months of expenses, then I want you to split it off into half goes towards investing, half goes towards your emergency fund until your emergency fund gets to 6 months. That's how I want you to think about this. And I want you to automate this entire process so that you personally are not relying on your willpower to put it in there. And so the way that you can do this is like, for example, Ally Bank is a great example. Ally Bank, you can set up savings buckets inside of Ally that literally allows you to budget inside of that savings account. And so once you do this, you have these categories available that are going to allow you to automate your money towards the things that you want. You'll have it all organized and it'll all be categorized in there. It's earning you a couple percentage points in interest. And so this is a really powerful way to set up your savings. And then for your investing, you just automate money every single month into your investment accounts, and you can automatically invest it as well. Fidelity has great tools, for example, on how to automatically invest it. We just did our Investing for Beginners webinar teaching you how to open a Fidelity account and how to actually automate your investments in that account. If you're interested in that, you can go to mastermoney.co/investing for beginners. So we have a webinar that we do live that will show you exactly how to do that. So our Investing for Beginners webinar teaches you exactly how that works. And so you have these dedicated buckets for your emergency fund, for your other savings goals, and then you also have dedicated money going towards your investment. So I want you to get your savings bucket set up and utilize that bucket method. It is very important to set up your financial baseline and really get your money working. Let's jump to number 3 next. So number 3 is to audit your 3 biggest expenses. So most people focus on cutting small expenses, things like lattes, things like cutting back on your coffee. And there was this thing that came out, in the early 2000s called the latte factor. And what the latte factor stated, if you go out and have a cup of coffee every single day, that's going to cost you $5. That latte will cost you $5. Now it's probably going to cost you $8, $9. And if you saved this money instead, you can have, $500,000 to $750,000 over the course of 30 years. Over the course of 40 years, you'd probably become, closer to a millionaire just by saving that money over the course of maybe 40, 50 years. And the latte factor is something that honestly, I don't really want you focusing on the small things like that, but sure, it would absolutely work. If you save $5 every single day, let's just do the math on that really quick. If you save $5 every single day and you invested that money into something like the S&P 500 index fund, and let's say the S&P 500 got 10% rate of return. Now, we can argue about that all day long, but just go Google S&P 500 historic returns, okay? So let's say we started at 0 and you got a 10% rate of return over the course of 50 years. You put it in an S&P 500 index fund, and you contributed $150 per month, okay? That'd be $5 per day over the course of 30 days, all right? Let's just calculate that really quick. It's amazing what really does happen here. This is absolutely amazing what you can do. So over the course of just 30 years, in that account, you'd have $309,000. That's not where it gets amazing, though. Okay, that is amazing. $5 per day for $300,000 over the course of 30 years. Over the course of 40 years, you'd have $832,000. This is starting from 0. Okay, if you had 40 years time, over the course of 50 years, though, this is where it becomes amazing. You'd have $2.189 million. This, my friends, is the power of compound interest. Now, I want you to think about that because this is a very small thing. Lattes are a really, really small thing. $5 per day is a small number. Now, what if we actually shifted our focus from these lattes every single day and moved our focus to the big ticket items. What are your top 3 big ticket items that you spend money on? Now, some of you may think you know what the big 3 items are, and some of you most likely don't know what one of those big 3 items are. So in the past, historically, I talk about the big 3 items for most people. What are they? They are housing, which usually most people spend most of their money on their housing, their rent, all those types of things. Actually, in my budget, it is not, which is going to be something I'll talk about in a second. Number 2 is transportation, meaning your car payments, your insurance payments. We just did an entire episode on how much you should be spending on a car, and it was very detailed. We also have a calculator that shows you how much you should be spending on a car in that episode as well. And then number 3 is food. And those are the big 3 items that I want you to think about, and I want you to really think through, is this one of my big 3 items? But for others, it may be something very different. If you are a parent with very young kids, one of the biggest ticket items in your line item probably, if you both work, is daycare. Daycare is a very expensive line item for most people. The costs are continuously rising every single year. They have a bunch of teachers there. There's a lot of people they have to pay in a daycare facility. And so those costs continuously rise every single year. And so for you, it may be daycare. For some, it may be restaurant spending. For some, we may have a shopping problem, and it may be shopping. For some, your number 1 line item, maybe you have 2 cars or 3 cars. I've talked to people before who they really value cars. And so maybe their biggest line item is car parts or putting together cars, or maybe your biggest line item is travel. It depends on the person. But for most people, housing, food, transportation are going to be the big 3. But if you're living a normal 9-to-5 life, but it could be daycare as well if you have young kids. And so if that is you, what I want you to do is I want you to audit your biggest 3 expenses. I want you to look at the last 3 months of expenses, figure out what your big 3 are. Now, you can do this actually now in something like Monarch Money if you want to, or you can do this, I'll do you one better. If you want to find a free way to do this, but you can go to ChatGPT and you can do a prompt and upload your last 3 months of bank statements and just say, hey, what are my 3 biggest line item expenses over the course of the last 3 months? And you're going to have to adjust and be more specific on that prompt, but it will spit out your biggest 3 expenses for the month. And you can have it audit your financial statements every single year, but you got to put in, your bank statements and your credit card statements all at once so it can actually look at all your transactions, okay? And it's very good at actually doing this. So it is something that you could utilize ChatGPT. You can utilize any other AI feature, and there's some really cool stuff you can do with AI now with your personal finances. We're going to be talking about that in that episode. Then what I want you to do is I want you to decide if you can make changes on this. For your housing, for example, there's a couple of things you got to think through. A, am I spending too much on housing? Am I spending over 30% of my income on housing? If you are, then you are spending too much on housing. And so what we need to do is make adjustments so that we can reduce the amount that we are spending on housing to less than 30%, okay? 2 is you can look at transportation. Am I spending too much on transportation? Am I overextended on transportation? Am I spending more than 12% of my income on transportation? If you are, let's cut it back and let's look for ways to reduce those costs. What can we do? A, we can shop car insurance. B, we could see, hey, am I just paying too much on this car? Is this just too much car for what I need? Can we sell this car or move on from this car and get a more affordable option? That's 2. 3, look at your daycare costs, look at your rent costs, look at all these different things and see if there's ways to reduce those expenses. Now, the easy ones are if you're someone who your biggest line item is eating out. Well, that's a very easy one to make adjustments on. You just reduce the frequency as to which you eat out. Or if your biggest line item is travel and you don't care that your biggest line item is travel, that's where you spend your dollars that bring you value, then more power to you. But if you care that you spend too much on travel, then you just travel a little less. So some of them are easier said than done. Some are really easy to cut back on if you really want to. And so you got to look at what your biggest 3 are. And I want you to know what that is in the top of your head because most people need to understand what their biggest 3 are. Mine, for example, is not housing, but I spend about 15% of my income on housing in total. It's actually not one of my top 3 line items. One of my biggest line items, for example, because I own a bunch of businesses, is taxes. And so for me specifically, it is very, very important for me to spend a lot of time looking into ways to reduce my tax bill. And so that is something I need to know. If I don't know that, I would never know to hire the right people, to put them into place, to make sure we are getting efficiency when it comes to taxes. Yours, if you're a business owner, maybe taxes. So you want you to think through some of this stuff because this is going to help you find money. And I want you to find money so you can take those extra dollars and put them towards things that you actually want this money to do. Your vacations, spending it on things that you actually love, and or putting it towards your financial freedom, which is most of you what you want to prioritize. Most of you are listening to this podcast because you want to achieve financial independence and you want to do it early. You want to do it as fast as you possibly can. You want to do it early. I want you to find money so that you can do that. Number 4 is if you have high interest debt and you have debt payments that are coming out of the wazoo and you just feel like all your money is going towards debt, guess what, Houston? We got a problem that we're going to solve right here, right now. And that means that we are going to go and attack that debt. So every extra dollar that comes up after you get to 1 month of expenses in your emergency fund, I want you to take those extra dollars and we are going to get after this debt. So any debt above a 6% interest rate, we want to get after. Now, this is going to exclude your mortgage because I don't want you spending 15 years trying to pay down your mortgage instead of investing. You are going to lose out on some amazing years of being able to grow your money. What we want to do is as mortgage rates start to begin to drop, then we want to just go ahead and refinance that mortgage later on. But if you have something like a car loan that is 10%, if you have something like a personal loan, or the most popular is credit card debt, if you have any of those types of items, I want you to attack this debt with your extra money. Why? Because once this debt is paid off, you're going to have a lot of extra dollars that you can now put towards your freedom in the future. And so we want to get rid of this debt as fast as we possibly can. Debt is the enemy of building wealth. It is the one thing that will cause you to go backwards if you do not take care of it, specifically high interest debt. Now, is there good debt? Is there bad debt? Sure, there absolutely is. You can utilize debt in order to further your businesses, or you can utilize debt in order to buy a rental property. There are different things that if the debt produces income for you, and it's enough income, the numbers make sense, there's a lot of factors, then there's good and bad debt. But for most people, when it comes to consumer debt, if you have credit card debt, that needs to get paid off right now. That is a pants on fire emergency. And it's amazing that I think a lot of people are now doing that. A lot of people who listen to this show are really attacking their debt. And it is so cool to see every single year at the end of the year when you guys talk about how you paid off all this debt in a year or 18 months. It is so powerful to watch that because now you've opened up opportunities for you to be able to do so many amazing things with your money. And I want you to thrive with your money. I want you to be stress-free with your money. I want you to reduce your anxiety with money. And that's what we are working to do. List all your debts by interest rate and then also list them by balance. If you have some with some small balances, let's just attack those first. Let's just get them out of the way. Let's get some quick wins. Let's get the ball rolling, okay? Once we get the ball rolling, then we can start to pay off some of these other debts in the future. Now, one other thing I want you to do is as you start to list all these debts, I want you to look at some of the interest rates. And if the interest rates are really high on some of these, I want you to start calling the credit companies and asking for a reduction in the interest rate. And it's their job to say no. It is not your job to think they're going to say no and not ask, okay? Let me say that again. It is not your job to think they're going to say no, but not ask. Too many people in this world do not ask because they made up this story in their head that they're going to say no. Will they say no? I don't know. They might say no, but it's your job to find out if they will or not. And so the only way to find out is to ask. And so I want you to try to negotiate some of those rates, maybe refinance. You can consolidate credit cards into a 0% interest loan for 18 months if you can figure something else out like that. But it's got to make sense for you specifically and your attack plan, okay? So paying off high interest debt is a big one. Now, we're going to jump into number 5 next. So number 5 is I want you to ask yourself some key spending questions, okay? So there are some questions that we need to ask ourselves every single time we make a purchase, specifically when it comes to a big purchase, but it's going to align with a lot of even smaller purchases as you start to think through the way that you spend your dollars and who you give your dollars to. We vote with our dollars with what we really want. That's the true indication of what we want in life. And maybe we just want some quick dopamine hits. And so we buy and spend on Amazon, or we do these little quick things that are making us happy in the short run. But in the long run, we forgot we even bought those specific things. And so if that's you, then let's start to ask ourselves some of these questions. Number 1, this is the framework to determine what you actually value, okay? Because I want you to figure out what your values are. Spending is actually a skill, and we want to spend our dollars on our values. So number 1, does this purchase align with my goals? Do I value travel? Do I value financial freedom? Do I value experiences over things? Does this purchase align with that? Number 2, how often will I use this? I cannot tell you how many times I have purchased things, and I've purchased expensive things and said to myself, oh, I'm gonna use this thing all the time. Here's a great example so I own some pickleball facilities. If you don't know this, one of the businesses we bought a bunch of indoor pickleball facilities. And one of the things that I did was I was like, I want to get a little better at pickleball. I can't own these pickleball facilities if I'm not good at pickleball because I'm not. I'm like a 4.0 player if anybody knows pickleball, which is just kind of like, in the middle. So I bought this thing it's a ball machine. And if you want to look it up, It's a Titan ball machine, which is like a $2,000 machine that shoots balls at you, okay? So then I called up the company and I said, hey, I own all these facilities. Can you give me a discount? They gave me a used one at a good discount, but still, I spent a lot of money on it, okay? I ended up spending something like $1,200 on this ball machine. It's an amazing, top-of-the-line, advanced ball. Hey, man, it does all these cool things. It shoots the ball at you in different angles. You literally don't have to move the machine. It does all these amazing things. And I said to myself, oh, I'm going to use this all the time. First month, use it a lot. Second month, use it a lot. Then, third month, my daughter was born. And the reason why I got it, because I wasn't going to play as much pickleball, and so I could use this ball machine and get some time in whenever I want. I haven't used that thing in 3 months. And so I have this really expensive thing sitting in my house that I have not used in 3 months. Now, I'm telling myself, as I'm telling you this, I'm going to start using it again a lot. Do I know if that's actually going to happen? I don't know, because if I don't put it in my calendar, it's not going to happen. Now, this is a huge example, and I'm telling you this because how many of you have bought something like a treadmill when you could just go run outside? And you bought a $1,000 treadmill, never used it, and you could just go run outside. I want you to kind of consistently come up with the habit before you make big purchases like that. And so when you're asking yourself, how often will I use this? You prove it to yourself first, meaning that you go out and for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you actually perform the habit over and over and over again. So if it is, fitness related, then you do that fitness item over and over and over again for 6 months. Then I got the habit in place. I'm going to be using this item. So that's one example. So if you're going to buy a treadmill and you're going to buy a $1,000 treadmill or a $2,000 Peloton treadmill or something like that, go ahead and start running outside 4 times a week. Prove to yourself that you have the habit before trying to make the habit by purchasing a new item. If you're trying to make a habit by purchasing a new item, most likely you're not going to do it. Incredibly guilty of this. And so that's something I think a lot of people need to think through. And then number 3 is, am I buying this for short-term happiness or long-term fulfillment? Those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself to figure out if you actually value something. Now, here's the framework to decide if you need something right now. A, if it's not essential, wait 24 hours. If it's over $100, I want you to wait at least 3 days. And if it's above $200, I want you to wait a week. If it's above $500, I want you to wait 30 days to make sure that you really, really want that item. And this is going to help you have a cooling off period to decide if you actually want that item or if it's just something that you really were thinking about a lot and you'd like to research the item. Some of us like the value of just researching purchases. There is actually some scientific studies that came out that people enjoy the process of researching purchases more than actually owning the item. And so that is something you got to be conscious if that's you. If you're someone who loves researching stuff and just looking into it and dreaming about having the thing and going through all that process, you got to make sure that you know that. And so I think for a lot of people, let's try to develop some cooling off period rules with our spending so that we just don't make these big purchases that really do not bring value to our lives. And so I want to think through that more and more as time goes on. All right, number 6 is a big one. And for most of you, this is an action item you can do today. Is I want you to audit your recurring expenses and figure out how to negotiate your bills. So first, we're going to look through, and I want you to take your bank statements, and I want you to look at those. If you use Monarch Money, or if you use any of those other budgeting apps, YNAB, or whatever else, if you use those apps, I want you to go and look at your recurring expenses. Most of the budgeting apps now will tell you, hey, this is a recurring expense. Here's when it falls every single month. It is all automated, which is amazing. And automation is just going to get better and better when it comes to your spending. And so I want you to look in whatever app you use and figure out what are my recurring expenses, all of them. Every single expense that comes every single month. And I want you to look at those, okay? Now, a couple of things that are going to happen here is you're going to see things like all of your subscriptions, which is a really important thing to look at. You're going to see things like your cable bill, things like your electric bill, maybe your mortgage or rent, maybe your utilities. All these different things are going to all be listed out, okay? And I want you to think through which one of these can I negotiate with. Your cable bill, for example, is priority number 1. Number 2 is probably your cell phone bill. There's a bunch of different items that I want you to start to identify a hit list. And I want you to go through that list, and we're going to start negotiating, baby. We're going to start to get on the phone, and we are going to put on our smiling faces, and we're going to start to negotiate a little bit. Because you can find a lot of money by negotiation. I just gave this example recently. My internet and cable bill all of a sudden crept up to $240 per month. When I saw it, I probably picked up the phone faster than anybody has ever picked up the phone in their entire life. And I called the cable company, and I said to them, hey, my bill went up. I want to find a way to either reduce the cost of this bill or I'm going to go ahead and cancel right now. That's how I worded it, literally. And so they came back and they said to me, well, let's see what we can do. They gave me one option, and they brought it down from 240 to 160. And I said, okay, that's not good enough. They looked at some other options. They brought it down from 160 to 140. And I said, okay, that's not good enough. Then they brought it down from 140 all the way down to $115. Right then and there, I saved $140 just by calling them up and going through the process. $140 every single month. And that's a really, really powerful thing to be able to do. You can do the same thing with your cell phone. If your cell phone gets out of hand, if they raise your rates on your cell phone without telling you, then start to call them up and have a conversation. You can leverage other companies. You can start to have real negotiations with these people and save yourself a lot of money. And this is just going to be something that you could do. And every time you get a reduction in a bill, I want you to take whatever the difference is, and I want you to start putting it in your investment account and watch how this grows. Because this is a huge difference. For example, my cable company example, that's well over, $1,400, $1,500 every single year. In addition, that you can start investing over time. And that $1,500 per year over the course of, so let's look at this for example. $1,500 every single year over the course of 50 years is $1.7 million if you invest that money in with a 10% rate of return. It is $663,000 over the course of 40 years, and over the course of 30 years, it's $246,000. This is a 6 to 7 figure decision to just learn how to negotiate your bills and then take the difference and invest it. The second step, though, is you have to take the difference and invest it. Otherwise, it's going to get commingled in your checking account, and you all know who you are because I am the same person, and then it's just going to disappear every month. So we got to make sure that we are also reallocating this money when we save it. And so really, really, really important to do that. And then you got to be polite but firm when you start to have these conversations. But secondly, I want you to look at all your subscriptions, and I want you to figure out, what am I not using? If there is a streaming subscription that you have not watched over the course of the last 30 days, get rid of it. Now, Amazon's different, obviously, because Amazon delivers packages also. They're all kind of baked into one. But if there is one that you have not used over the course of the last 30 days, get rid of it. You can always get it back. They are month-to-month contracts, but get rid of it. I do this all the time. So one thing I do is if I'm watching a specific show, I'll start to get rid of some of the other subscriptions. The only ones that I typically would keep around is the ones that my kids will also watch, so Netflix or Disney or whatever else. But if it's rotating between something like Paramount Plus or HBO or any of those types of things, I will not keep those around every single month. Why? Because you can't watch all of them every month. And so you got to have a rotation going, and it's going to save you, $20, $30, $40, $50 every single month. Is it a pain in the butt? Not really. You just log in and say cancel. And so it's really an easy process that will take you 2 minutes. When you're doing your 2-minute drill every single day, just add that to your 2-minute drill, and it will help you kind of just stay on top of some of this stuff. So list all your subscriptions, go through that list and say, which one of these can I cancel? Which one of these can I negotiate is 1. Which one of these can I cancel is 2. All right, number 7 is to use your windfalls wisely. So those of you who get a raise every single year, or those of you out there who get a bonus every single year, or if those of you who work in sales and you get a really big sales check one month, or for those of you who work in commissions and you get a huge commission check all in one month, or for those of you out there who have any other financial windfalls, maybe you win the lottery, maybe you get an inheritance. I don't know what your financial windfalls would be, but here's the rule for your windfalls, okay? The 50-50 rule. Now, if it's something massive like an inheritance, or if it's like something massive like the lottery, all of it needs to go to investments. Why do I say that? Because if it's a big number, the last thing you want to do is start spending that money on depreciating assets. What a lot of people do is they'll go out and they'll buy like a new car. I don't want you doing that. I want you taking the money and investing it and then figuring out a financial plan for those dollars. So if you get a big financial windfall, that's number 1. If you get money coming in from commission checks, then I want you to follow this rule, the 50-50 rule. So above and beyond whatever your means are, when this money comes in, 50% goes towards future you, emergency fund, investments, those types of things. 50% goes towards the things that you want. Vacations, you want to buy a new TV. You want to spend more on things that you actually want to do day in and out. Maybe you want to raise the amount that you spend on eating out every month. Maybe you want to increase your efficiency in your house. Doesn't matter what it is. 50-50. 50% towards an emergency fund and investments, 50% towards the things that you love. If you follow the 50-50 rule, you will really make huge financial progress with your money. That's what a wealth builder does, is they always give some to their future selves, and then they also take some money and they give some to their present self. This is not about trying to struggle every single month. This is all about managing your money wisely so that you can have balance. Balance is the name of the game when it comes to managing this. Now, if you want to retire in 10 years or less, maybe you're really trying to pursue financial independence, throw it all in investments if you don't care. But if there's stuff that you want and you know that you want to live it up, you want to live your best life, then go ahead. Take some of those dollars, put them towards things that you actually love. Number 8 is if you are struggling to save and invest enough, I want you to follow the 1% rule, and its impact is really, really cool over the course of just a few years. So the 1% rule is a very simple but powerful way to increase your savings without feeling the pain. The key here is I don't want you to have to feel the pain. And so we like to do things gradually when we increase our savings, and we also like to do it gradually when we decrease the amount that we're spending. Everything is gradual with the way that we do it here, okay? And so the way that we think about this is you can increase your savings rate, for example, by 1% every single month. Now, if you need to get to 20% savings rate, which is the minimum that we want you doing towards your investments and towards your emergency fund, but if you need to get to that 20% number, then what I want you to do is start to increase it by 1% every single month over the course of the next 10 to 12 months. So if you're starting to save 10% right now, over the course of the next 10 months, start to increase that savings rate by 1%. Now, if you can do more, and you know you can do more because you're kind of going through some of these exercises, you cut out some subscriptions, you start to negotiate some of your bills, you found some money, hey, do all of it. But if you are trying to just get by, then let's start gradually increasing this and start to gradually decrease somewhere else. Decrease 1%, then increase that 1% over time. And what is going to happen here is over the course of 10 months, now you're going to be saving and investing 20%. Now, how powerful is this? Let's say, for example, you make $5,000 per month. That means it's only $50 in month 1 that you're increasing it, then $100 in month 2. So over the course of a year, you're going to save an additional 12%. And if you do that, if you made $5,000 per month, you would save an additional $3,900 extra by the end of 1 year. If you invest that at 10% annually over the course of 40 years, that extra would be $1.95 million. Amazing, amazing what you can do with your money if you just make gradual changes over time. And so following that 1% rule is a very, very powerful method that I really want you to think through. Number 9 is every single person needs to know this. They need to understand this. And this is what I want you to take away from this episode. There's only 3 ways to save more. It is either cut expenses, so eliminating unnecessary spending, lowering your bills through negotiation, and reducing lifestyle inflation, meaning reducing, your lifestyle inflating every time you get a raise, okay? That's number 1, is to cut expenses. And I want you to cut them gradually again, if you're going to cut them. Number 2, optimizing spending, meaning you start to optimize the way that you're spending. You can buy in bulk to save money. You can get cash back rewards on specific purchases, those types of things. Optimizing spending is probably the least likely to make a huge, huge impact, okay? So that's number 2. Maybe you buy your car insurance 6 months ahead instead of buying it all, instead of paying month to month, and you get a savings, those types of things. That's number 2. Number 3 is to earn more. Now, earning more is going to be the single biggest factor that makes the biggest impact over time on your money. And so if you can learn how to earn more by asking for a raise or making additional income with a side business or a side hustle, you will be in an amazing position. And so earning more will change your life if you learn how to do it. We have a bunch of episodes on how to earn more. We're going to have another episode coming up here, so make sure you're following the podcast on ways that you can start to build side hustles that could turn into full-time businesses. We had a bunch of those last year. People loved them. So we have more ideas coming up for you, which I'm really, really excited about. And so I want you to pick 3 of these strategies we talked about today. And I want you to implement them and start to take action on them. Maybe it's automating your savings and debt payments. Maybe it is tracking your progress weekly. Maybe it is starting to negotiate your bills. Maybe it is cutting out some of those expenses that you don't really value. Maybe it's just going and doing a subscription audit. All this stuff will have a major impact for you to be able to double your savings this month. And so I really want you to think through how you can do that so that you can get your dollars and start to really make massive financial progress. Listen, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got value out of this. Our entire goal is to bring you as much value as possible. And thank you for investing in yourself, because it's exactly what you do when you listen to the podcast, is you are investing more in yourself. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you on the next episode.